Hello, everybody. Today, we are going to have our minds blown. So, today's guest is a legal mastermind with a Midas touch when it comes to investments. Buckle up because we are going to have a wild ride today. This is Newcomers to Trailblazers, your podcast show, bi-weekly episodes. I'm Monisha, I'm your host, and heck yeah, we are going to scream from rooftops today. Please put your hands together for Harjeet, a second-generation immigrant who's living the Canadian dream when he was knee-high to a grasshopper. So hold your horses. This journey wasn't all sunshine and maple syrup. Harjeet faced challenges dealing with racism at a very young age, and that would make your jaw drop. Raised in a small town by very hardworking parents, he is a proud papa himself, raising a third-generation immigrant, and he has roots from Punjab, India. Harjeet's all about keeping the cultural heritage strong while embracing the beautiful multicultural tapestry in Canada. By day, he's an investment management guru. I need some advice. No advice comes for free, mates. Remember that. But I need some advice.
Happy to help.
So let's put our hands together and he will make the money magic work. So let's give Harjeet a warm welcome.
Thank you. Yeah, happy to be here.
Thank you for coming.
Delight. We'll have a good conversation.
Okay. So he traveled a very long distance, so far away from a very, very far away land just to record this. How was your traffic experience?
Oh, it was like, I think 120 steps, if I'm looking at my watch correctly.
It was 120 steps. Usually my guests travel from Chilliwack and Abbotsford, and this person is my neighbor and I'm very grateful for that.
You're going to have to invite me back several times.
I am going to invite you back. All right. So let's get into the game. You weren't born here and you have roots which is from the rich soil of Punjab. Let's spill the chai a little bit, right? How much of that amazing culture was involved in your upbringing?
Well, first, I just want to acknowledge that we work, live, and play on the ancestral land and territory, unceded territory of the Squamish, Tsleil-Waututh, and Musqueam Nation. And anyone who's not Indigenous is essentially an immigrant to this country. So it's important to acknowledge that. And having said that, the roots of my parents, what they passed down to, they were trying to find a very balanced mix. They shared everything with us. I think when you're young, you're maybe a little bit embarrassed. Maybe sometimes the food has a powerful smell when you're taking it to school. And sometimes your classmates poke fun at you. But later in life, I acknowledge and appreciate how much of that they shared. Everything from the food to the culture, to the movies, the Bollywood films, the Punjabi films, all that has just been fantastic. And being a parent now, you kind of find the struggles of how do you find that perfect balance? Because it wasn't easy. It's not easy for any immigrant to find that perfect balance of the culture because you don't want to be assimilated. So but you want to try to fit in.
Yeah.
So sharing those experiences, my parents, try to provide that tapestry of blend of cultures was incredibly important for me in my growing up.
Okay. Because I am a first generation immigrant and I had a huge culture shock when I moved here because I come from a completely different culture, different food style, different climate, different people, different communication style, different collaboration style, a lot of that, right? So when I moved, it was like a culture shock, and many first generation immigrants experience culture shock. The person who is sitting behind my camera, who's also my colleague, also experienced culture shock. Have you ever experienced culture shock?
Oh, many times. Even though I was born here, my brother was born here. There's times where I went up north for basketball games or soccer games, and those are communities that certainly aren't nearly as diverse as Vancouver or some of the areas in Canada that have a lot of different ethnicities and cultures and backgrounds. And actually, even today, I still experience it, but probably more so when I was a child and through that experience. And there's times when you went up north to play a sports game and people are looking at you and they're like, hey, is this person Indigenous or is this person Hispanic? They just can't figure it out. And they would come straight up to you and ask you where you're from, right? And I kind of thought, like, having been born here, I kind of thought, well, don't these people know who I am? Yeah, I'm human, and maybe they should know a little bit more about my background. But I think it's also important to note that it's okay to ask if someone doesn't know.
Mhm.
It's the method and the tone of how they ask, right?
Yeah.
So, to kind of fight racism, it's about empowering others with knowledge.
Okay.
So for sure. I've never ceased to be surprised on that for the culture shock. And I think for newcomers coming here, you probably experience it on a more frequent basis,
Yeah.
but certainly for me, many times.
Okay. That is actually, it is very strange knowing that we know culture shock is a real thing, of course. And it is different for different people, especially when it comes to first generation immigrants. And it is crazy that even second generation immigrants or any generation immigrant experience similar culture shocks or maybe different culture shocks in different ways. And the concept of it all still exists. And in a way, it is sad. And in a way, it is also important to be uh, acknowledging that there are differences. And it is important to ask respectfully, like you mentioned. If I have to specifically say something, somebody taught me how to be respectful when you ask for a name. Some names are anglicized because it is easier to pronounce in a way for native English speakers. And some people prefer to not use anglicized names. When we are using a culturally ingrained name, which is difficult to pronounce, somebody taught me that you can say, can you spell that for me, but slowly so that I get the grasp of how you're pronouncing your name. So if you're going to ask, say the name is Adeleke, so how do you spell it? Adeleke. And do that slowly so that we get how you are pronouncing your name and they can pick it up. And that was something which is very simple, but it is also very respectful when you think of it. What do you think about that?
Absolutely. I think that's the best way. I mean, we may not have the ability to speak other dialects and other languages, but I think just the attempt, the genuine attempt to say, how do I pronounce your name properly? And acknowledging that. And my grandfather taught me at a very young age is one of the most respectful things you can do for another human being is know them by name and try to pronounce their name in their native language. Now, sometimes we can't roll our R's or pronounce certain vowels as well as they do, and that's natural. But I think just a genuine attempt, the curiosity, and saying that, just saying, I want to make sure that I pronounce your name properly. I don't want to do it incorrectly. And I think most people, most humans would like that. I think they would respect that. What ends up happening is we find anglicized short names, whether we're in school, we're on sports teams, or with our work staff, just because sometimes you're just like, okay, they butchered my name so many times, so I'm just going to recreate my name or give them a short name. But I think it's important to ask, and to really make a genuine attempt.
Okay. We have actually touched upon his grandfather's blessing and his advice. Now I'm going to ask my question around that. So let's talk family legacy. What are some golden nuggets of advice or life lessons your parents and your family, extended family, or the whole family passed down to you that you still hold on to dearly? One of which is pronounced name correctly in their own dialect. Very good. What other simple nuggets can you give us?
Oh, wow. I mean, that's going back a long time, but I'm going to start with my grandfather, just a wise individual, way beyond his years. And for me, he left a very lasting legacy, and I'm not going to remember everything that he shared with us, but some of the more important ones that we already talked about is try to pronounce someone's name in their own dialect or their native language, but also to not make fun of anybody who's speaking another language. And specifically here in Canada, just our family had a very strong Indian accent, and our family was at times made fun of. But my grandfather would always say, we speak other languages as well. This is a language that we've learned in addition to the languages that we grew up. So he also equally shared that with my brother and I, to say, you never make fun of someone trying to enunciate or trying to pronounce certain words in another language that's not native to them. So be very respectful of that. I would say the other part of legacy, my father ingrained in our family very deeply that just be very mindful and open-minded of what other individuals may be struggling with. That we can't judge. We can't be quick to judge someone. You never know what's going on behind the scenes. And certainly there's more awareness today around mental health and so forth, which is great. And we still have a long ways to go. But I would say those are two pretty golden nuggets. It kind of comes back to my grandfather. When my father first moved here to Canada from Punjab, he tried fitting in. He actually cut his hair, he removed his turban, and he had what I would say is a very Western hairstyle. As you can see, my hairstyle's long gone. But when my grandfather finally was able to immigrate here to Canada, it was one of the very first questions he asked my father was, well, why did you do that, son? And my dad said, well, I did it to blend in so we didn't face as much racism. And he goes, don't ever shy away from who you are. Be proud of who you are. You can still embrace cultures, but you don't need to change who you are. So yeah, it's important to be open-minded of where you're living and embrace their cultures and backgrounds as well. But don't dilute your background as well.
Okay. Very, very simple advice, but it carries a lot of depth and it carries a lot of gravity to what he said. And remember not to mock people because they speak a different dialect or they speak a different accent. And importantly, be who you are, embrace who you are, and be proud of who you are. Yeah. Okay.
Easy to say, but hard to do.
Yeah, I know, right? It is so easy. It's so easy to say, and it is very hard to do. Yes, I agree. So you mentioned that you had attended sports events from northern part of BC or northern part of Canada, for that matter. You grew up in Kelowna, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, so Kelowna.
Yeah. Sorry.
Humble Kelowna, as they say.
Oh, okay. All right. So Kelowna in the 80s, right? I was not born in the 80s. Not that I'm trying to solidify his age here, but I was not born in the 80s. And Kelowna, to me, in the 80s was a small town. Am I right?
Yeah. I mean, in some aspects, it's still small compared to other cities, but it's grown a lot.
Okay. So I would say a small town with a big personality. So we know that racism exists. It's a real thorn in everybody. We have spoken about it. We have touched a bit about it. But tell us about your childhood experiences. Like, was it? I'm sure it was not sunshine and rainbows. Nobody's childhood is sunshine and rainbows. It's different for different people. But did you encounter some challenges that helped you shape the kind of person you are today?
Yeah, that's a very loaded question because growing up in Kelowna provided me with some of the best experiences of incredible friends and family there that would agree. I mean, coming from a smaller town, you get to build those very humble roots and really get to experience the true lifestyle that Kelowna has to offer, which is incredible. And on the opposite end of that spectrum, because Kelowna wasn't as diverse back then, it's certainly gotten better. There's different ethnicities and different backgrounds there now, which is fantastic. But back in the 80s, it was a struggle at times, whether it was being picked on at school because you looked a different way, you talked a different way. Sometimes our parents dressed us in Indian clothes and they were shiny and they had sparkles on them. So we often found ourselves up against bullies, which I think regardless of whatever background or journey you have in life, there's always going to be bullies. But I think being in a minority community, you have more than your fair share. And that was incredibly difficult, whether that was in school being picked on or being made fun in classrooms or just sports. I remember there was times in my adolescence of playing soccer there in Kelowna, and there were derogatory things said right on the field, and the referee was like literally 2 feet away, and I'm like, I can't believe the whistle didn't blow or nothing was said, that there was no acknowledgement. And I think that's what really hurt. And difficulty here, I mean, these things unfortunately happen, and you try to find ways to understand why they continue to happen. But Kelowna's gotten better today. I can definitely tell you that. But growing up, it was tough. And I think what makes it tougher is when those incidents happen, and sometimes they happen in very public events or venues, it's when good people stay silent. It's when there's other people who make up the majority of the community and they don't stick up for you. I think that was a very challenging experience for me. So a lot of good memories that I hold today and I want to continue to expand on, and also for my young children as well, because I still do have Kelowna dear in my heart and go back often. But I think the other aspect of that too, there were definitely some difficult memories as well.
Okay. Sounds very difficult. And something that I grasped from your conversation, from your experience, is that upstander behavior is not taught, or it is not modeled even in today's world. If you are seeing racism, or if you are seeing like derogatory comments which is made by some people to other communities, irrespective of who makes it and irrespective of who is it's made to, it is important not to be someone who observes and walks away. You have to be an upstander. You cannot be a bystander. And to experience and to learn from that experience, to be an upstander takes courage. Saying no to being assertive, it takes a lot of courage. If you were that soccer field coach today, what would you do differently?
Well, I think just acknowledging that those terms are derogatory and the negative impact they have in society would probably be the number one thing. Just to give that individual or those individuals who are facing that racism or stereotypes is to validate what they're feeling is true, and that it's very unfortunate, and not all people think that way. I think secondary too is providing an opportunity for learning as well. And going back to my experiences in Kelowna, there were opportunities where someone may have said something that was very hurtful to not only my community or another community. Having someone else speak up and validate that was wrong, and also saying, take some time to learn about them. Because validating it and calling it out is one step, but then how do you actually provide a solution so it doesn't happen again? Whether it's to you or somebody else or another stranger, because that's really important as well, to say, that's wrong. That's misguided information that you're saying. It's hurtful. And I would encourage you to take a step, to take an initiative, to learn more about that individual, he or she, and their group and community. And sometimes when we experienced it in Kelowna, and to our community, the Sikh community, we would offer those individuals to come to the Gurdwara and show who we are and empower them and embrace them with love and knowledge, to say, hey, mankind, we're all one. There's no difference. Yeah. So that would be my recommendation is to speak up, because when we don't say anything, we're really, with our silence, we're saying it's okay. Okay. And it doesn't have to be just against your own community. We should stand for other communities as well, because we're all brothers and sisters in this world. And I think at that time, I would have wished someone else who stood up outside my community would have stood up for me. Yeah. So I try to be that beacon of light and knowledge too for other communities. And I'm still in the journey of learning about other cultures too. There's so many different cultures here in Vancouver. Newcomers come in where you got to keep an open mind. That's the other part I would say too, is validate what they're feeling is true, that it's emotional and it's negative. Provide an opportunity to learn, but also kind of on that third part too, being open-minded too. Right? How can we make this better? How can we provide an opportunity to grow from it?
Okay. He said it so beautifully, and I would like you to go back and rewind and listen to it again, so that you also embrace, you also understand, you also learn from his experience. We have spoken slightly about mental health. I grew up in a household which did not acknowledge mental health existing. Not that I'm complaining, but that's the kind of household we grew up in. I was not in a space where I would say, yeah, I'm not feeling well, but I'm not feeling well internally. It's not just my body hurts, my health, like mental health hurts. And I don't think I've ever said it. And for me to grow in my community when I was little is like, push forward with all the strength you have. And my parents taught me, shit happens in life. It does not matter. Oops, I said it. But it does not matter. You keep pushing forward and it is not going to break you. And that stereotype existed when I was growing up. And I think it has shaped me as a human even today. Even today, I just keep pushing forward. It does not matter what comes to me. And at one point of time, my mental health, I have a complete breakdown. and I don't know how to acknowledge or how to experience the mental health breakdown. And we have heard the rumors, the ABCD and everything. And let me ask you, I have heard that immigrant parents have always pushed their dreams on to the next generation. Not that other parents don't, me as an example, but yeah, immigrant parents have done that. So, being a second generation immigrant yourself, how are you raising your child with the Punjabi heritage as well as embracing your Canadian identity? And do you have any secret formula at all?
Yeah, you ask really good questions. That one's really loaded. And I would share this, that both my wife and I, like many other parents, try to find the perfect balance, the harmony that we stay true to our roots, but also acknowledge that we live in a beautiful country, a country that is very multi-ethnic and diverse. And we should celebrate and champion that as well. So we, like just this morning at home, we made a decision that we're only going to speak Punjabi this morning to kind of help promote our children. If they hear it more, then they'll hopefully feel more comfortable using that. We've also communicated to our in-laws as well, is that when they're with you at your house and you're babysitting and looking after them, that we would encourage you to do the same. Now, there's certain times where, you kind of come back and you use your English phraseology or sentences there, and just kind of out of natural, it comes quickest to you. But we have to remind ourselves too, is that if we're not embodying what that behavior should look like in terms of being open-minded, it starts with us. Yeah. It really starts with us. So it is a struggle, and I'm not saying we've perfected it, but there's certain things we do that to make sure that they go to the temple on Sundays, that we listen to our folk music or cultural music as well. But we also embrace other cultures as well. So when there's Greek Day or Italian Day, we take our children there. And we really celebrate and champion the fact that we live, as you mentioned, we live in a very beautiful area of Vancouver where it is very diverse. And I don't think there is any majority in the community here, which is great for the schools as well, because I go in and I see so many beautiful children and parents from different parts of the world. And I know that's only going to strengthen their outlook. So coming back to that, it is, it's an everyday thing. You have to be very mindful and aware of that, but also children learn very quickly. Yeah. So this is a stage to do it. And they can adapt fairly quickly as well. So although it's harder for me at my age, I won't give you my age, but it's harder to kind of have that the ability to absorb new languages and texts very quickly. Children are very resilient. So I think sometimes we forget as parents that we can actually probably apply more. We can probably share more. But it is something that we constantly think about is, what is the right medium at this age? And how do we be more impactful with our learning? But we're very fortunate too. We have great community. We have great families on both sides that are there to support. And like the common phrase, it takes a village to raise children. Yeah. Right. And we're very well supported in that aspect. And we try to champion it as much as possible.
That's beautiful. Ultimately, like you said, it takes a village to raise a child, or many. I'm going to tell you what I understood from this. And it is important, while it is important to expect them to blend in the society, or it is also important to teach them to be their unique selves as well. So yes, it is a delicate balance, like you mentioned. Totally. And thank you so much for sharing that. We have spoken about you, your family, your generation, your upbringing. I have also shared about my upbringing. So I want to ask you, what would you advise for the newcomers who are coming today? So comfort zones are comfy, but it's not exactly where dreams are born. So define the immigrant comfort zone, and what are some actionable tips that we can do to break free and crush it one meal?
Yeah, that's a good question. So what was the first question again? It was
okay. So my first
define the comfort zone.
So define the immigrant comfort zone.
Okay, right. So I would based on my observations and my experience from childhood and from my families that I've got witnessed firsthand, is the communities that we associate with, whether that be our work community, our social community, it's natural to feel more comfort with individuals who look like you. Humans naturally gravitate to other humans where there's a presence of familiarity. That's not a secret, right? And that will probably continue to happen. And that's happened for thousands of years. So just kind of seen in my parents' kind of experience in our household, they naturally gravitated towards friends who spoke Punjabi and kind of resembled them more. And from that perspective, I think it was probably early in the childhood, most of the friends looked like them, but I got to see my parents grow out of their comfort zone. They made friends from other ethnic groups, other backgrounds, which was great to see because it also encourages the children to kind of break out of that mold as well. Yeah, going back to the comfort zone for immigrants, it's natural to stay in communities where there are other individuals who look like you, speak like you, and have the background. And what I would say to that is I would probably do the same thing if I moved away, because you're trying to find this place of settlement. And I also want to acknowledge and certainly appreciate that individuals who've moved from their home countries, who've left their families, who've left their jobs, their careers, everything that they've put into blood, sweat, and equity in those countries to come over here, have already gone out of their comfort zone. So I think that's very important to acknowledge that, when you come over here, you're facing a lot of uncertainty, and you could be facing some unfortunate challenges as well, whether it be economical or trying to get into the school system or trying to get into the job system as well to provide for your family and your household. So it's natural to find your comfort zone. And I believe the second part of your question was, what's one of the skills to have? And so kind of going back to the first part is any individual who leaves the comfort of their home nation, where they grew up and their family, has already shown how brave they are and how courageous they are. And I will always say that. I've never had to do that in my life. I think the most I ever moved was going from Vancouver from Kelowna to Vancouver. So that's just over 400 Ks. I can't imagine what it's like to go over from one nation to a new continent, to learn a new language, a new culture and everything. And unfortunately, there's times where the education that you have in your home system, you have to restart that because it's not acknowledged and appreciated to the country that you've landed in. So I would say that individual or that family has already shown courage and how brave they are, and probably resiliency, because they're going to be facing a lot of challenges. What skill level or attribute would I say would help them not only survive, but thrive? I'd kind of come back to just being open-minded. Being open-minded about what you can actually accomplish. We thankfully live in a beautiful country where there's a lot of opportunities. You can be anybody or any profession you want to be if you apply yourself and you work incredibly hard. So we're thankful of that. I would also say, as you embody open-mindedness, share more about your culture to people who want to learn. Right? Don't shy. Don't be closed-knit. So if someone has a genuine passion to seeing who you are, what your background is, and wants to know how to pronounce your name in your native dialect, celebrate that, champion that, but equally too, show a genuine interest in them. Right? So as you're stepping out of your comfort zone, try to look at embracing yourself in other communities where they're trying to step out of their comfort zone as well. Because together, if we have that mindset, we have that mentality, and we embody open-mindedness, I think we're just a stronger community. We're a more connected community when we share who we are and we celebrate that.
Okay. Because I come from southern part of India, I really have very less friends who are from southern part of India at this point of time. But I have friends who are from Nigeria. I have friends who are from Afghanistan, Iran, or certain parts of India. But I have made friends who are from outside of my community. And what does that give me? That gives me a platform to learn about other cultures. And that gives me the open-mindedness to be inclusive of other cultures. Not that I'm saying I'm doing the right thing. I could also improve. But it is important to accept, it is important to acknowledge, and it is okay to ask respectful questions and learn about their culture. So, thank you.
You're welcome. Yeah. I mean, we've talked a lot about me. I'm hoping we can kind of turn around some of the questions for you.
Yeah.
You asked me what one of the traits we should have as a newcomer to this beautiful nation we call Canada. what would your answer be?
Don't expect the country to owe you something. I know it takes a lot to move, and the most important thing to move from one country to another is courage. You mentioned it. I think it takes more than courage. It takes a lot of finances. You're the money person. I'm going to start from there. It takes a lot of economical support. You are spending a lot of time. You're preparing for your IELTS exam or French exam. You're preparing for your medical certificates. You're preparing for your passport, police verification, and whatnot. Right? You are spending a lot of time, energy, money to move here as a first generation immigrant. And by the time an immigrant moves here, it feels like I have already done the work. Now it is the job of the country to give me back. And I would disagree. I strongly disagree to that. Irrespective of which country you move to or you're staying in your own home country, you need to put the work to expect returns. Money person here, he's going to say, you have to invest to expect returns, right? You cannot invest air and expect $100 in return, right? So it is important that while you are emotionally invested, you're also financially invested. It is important to invest your work as well. Only then you can expect returns. And that is something I strongly believe. Any newcomer who comes to me and asks me, Monisha, I'm going through a lot of things. You are. I don't deny that. Every immigrant goes through this. It is important. Your situation is different from other immigrants, and I agree. But something that's common is your hard work. And you've already put 50% of the work by moving here. The remaining 50% is going to be put in your 100% to achieve that 50% of hard work. And that really matters. And that's what I believe.
Very well said. And I'm not sure if our audience knows, but how we originally connected was I had an opportunity to see Monisha do public speaking at the Burnaby Board of Trade event. And I came up to her afterwards and just acknowledged how well the job she did and just wanted to hear more about her background. So being a newcomer to Canada, how did you find the courage to jump on stage, that platform right away? Because public speaking is something that I would say is probably highly ranked as a fear for most individuals. And you seem to do it very naturally. Seems like you have a very genuine passion doing it. But what makes it even more difficult is you're doing it in a different language, which I'm just incredibly impressed with. So maybe I think our audience would want to kind of hear how you've been able to kind of tackle what is a very common fear for most individuals.
I was very scared during the event. I have to tell you all. I was extremely scared. I had high heart rate. My hands were shivering. And I was very polite and I was sitting like this. But it was very difficult. And yes, like you mentioned, fear of public speaking, which is called glossophobia, the biggest fear of every other fear that is out there. And it is very difficult to face people. I have always been a person who's volunteered for presentations and seminars when I was a child, adolescent. So I would go in front of people and I will start talking, whether I'm prepared or not. I was very unprepared back then. But I made a point to prepare myself. And before I hit that stage, there are so many things I do. I would prepare notes, small notes. I would take printouts. I would speak in front of mirror. I would speak in front of cameras. Before I go to that stage, there is a lot of pre-work that is done. And I am today a prepared speaker. Previously, I was not. And today I'm a prepared speaker. And the preparedness actually gives you more confidence to face people. And the silliest joke that I remembered when I was young is, it was in the beginning very hard to be a public speaker. And I remember my chemistry teacher telling me, assume that people are donkeys who are sitting in front of you. Not that I'm going to call my audience donkeys. But the point is, assume that they don't know anything what you're talking about and go in depth about how you're speaking and how you're explaining. Everybody's knowledge of what you're speaking about could be different, the level of knowledge. And it is okay to go back to the basics and explain from the basics. Because as an audience, your knowledge might be 0, somebody else's knowledge might be 80%. So it is important to acknowledge that everybody is different and you have to go back to the basics to get the right things out there. So that's how I learned it. I don't know if I answered your question.
No, you did. I mean, having witnessed it firsthand, you do it so naturally. I know there's more to it as you elaborated to the preparation is, but you really have to have take an opportunity to see Monisha speak in person, because you'll be blown away. I know I was taken back by it, just seeing the courage on stage and just the ability to put yourself in a zone where you may not be naturally comfortable. I think you embody that very well. And then I'm coming full circle back on this conversation. Put yourself outside your comfort zone, because that's where the growth is.
Yeah.
And it's not easy, but lean on people who can support you. So maybe with that, how are you pushing yourself outside your comfort zone being here in Canada?
Something that I've often said in a lot of public spaces, as well as in my podcast, is I'm very shameless. Even in interviews, when people ask me what is your one true thing that you're really good at, I'll be like, I am shameless. I ask for help. What I mean by shameless is not, it might sound very negative because the word is portrayed negatively, but I embody that in a very positive way, and I ask for help. I'm not shied away asking for help. Sometimes me asking for help might sound desperate. People have pointed that out to me. Sometimes it might be desperate, but other times I acknowledge that I need help. Not everything I know, because this is a new country. I'm trying to live in a new culture. I don't know the work. I don't know the credentials. I don't know the job. I don't know how collaboration is different here. I don't know how many cultures are out there really. And I don't know, like when we started the conversation, I don't know to pronounce half the names when people say it. And I ask, right? I ask for it. Something that I learned in the first 6 months, 7 months is that how to be respectful. And the worst advice I've ever heard, especially with immigrant growth, is that fake it till you make it. Oh my God, that is the worst advice I've ever heard. The reason why I say it is, by faking it, you're saying that you already know. And I disagree to it. You don't know, and it's okay that you don't know, right? You ask for it. And comes back to me being shameless. So that's how I push myself out of comfort zone. And as an extrovert, I find it easier to push myself out of comfort zone, but it is way hard for the introverts. So I have learned that every meeting that I go to, I take an introvert with me and I will introduce them to other people and say, hey, this is the person, she does amazing work. They do amazing work. By doing that, I'm giving the opportunity to the introvert to put themselves out there. So that is something that I've actively started.
Wow. Well, I appreciate hearing that. I think the audience did as well. So, I mean, those are some of the questions that I had for today, but really enjoyed the opportunity to sit down and have.
I have one more question.
Okay. You're not going to let me off easy.
Okay. So you're the financial fairy godfather. So my question is, tell us some inspiring stories of how you have helped clients achieve their financial dreams and goals. Of course, it involves sweat and blood and sprinkle of joy, but tell us some inspiring stories.
Well, there's so many I can share, and I've just been very fortunate to have the opportunity to work with so many incredible individuals and families over my almost 2-decade career in the financial industry. But it's hard to pinpoint just one, but if I can kind of pinpoint kind of the storylines, because there's certain examples where I think the storylines kind of line together in some form of commonality, is when you think of wealth, when you think of money, true wealth goes beyond the accumulation of assets.
Yeah.
It's about living a meaningful and purposeful life. And when you have the opportunity to sit down with these families and talk and have a deeper conversation to truly understand what matters to them, it's not money.
Yeah.
It's the opportunity to live a life that excites them, to nurture the ones that they love, and to look forward with anticipation and not apprehension. So I would say anytime I have the ability to sit down and really do deep, meaningful planning with them, and that can be a broad range of scope, but certainly with the business families, whether they've been here for many generations or if they're a new immigrant family and they've taken the risk to start something up from their own blood, sweat, and equity, what I found just incredible, gratifying is helping them on that journey. But more importantly, having a conversation to have the ability to understand them more deeply of what they want in life and what they want the next generation life to have. So as we talk about immigrant families, one of the things I've noticed is some families, or a lot of families, work incredibly hard. They bring that hard work ethic here to Canada, which is great to see. They're contributing members to society. They're paying their taxes. They're trying to find ways to create more jobs. But in that, they work so hard that they don't want the next generation to experience the same struggles and challenges they did. And I see that from my own family experience, that my parents worked day and night, 7 days a week in our family business so that I didn't have the experience and challenges and hardships that I did. And in doing that, there can be this very delicate kind of point in time where are you creating a hammock of complacency and entitlement?
Yeah.
So going back to your question, what I found to be the most gratifying is having those deep, meaningful conversations with those families and putting in continuity plans so that their hard work can only be enjoyed by the next generation, but that legacy of values, hard work and discipline, open-mindedness, all these things that have been rewarded for them in their journey gets passed down. And they continue to pass it down. So I would probably say that's probably the most inspiring stories I have as a collective kind of group of examples.
And you are absolutely right. When people say financial goals, most commonly it is assumed that collection of assets, be it gold or property or stocks, shares, anything, collection of assets is considered financial wealth. Ultimately, you're going to die alone. You're not going to carry the money with you.
Can't take it with me.
Yeah, you can take it with you. It is important to live a meaningful life. And yes, it is important to pass down some of those wealth to your next generation, provided they want it. And yes, I agree that every immigrant who go through such hardship might not want their respective generation to go through it as well.
And I often say when I sit down with clients and other families is that challenge is inevitable. Conflict is optional.
Yeah, that's a really good. Challenge is inevitable and conflict is optional. Very good. Yeah.
So clear communication and just very thorough planning can always be beneficial.
And like you rightly mentioned, something that I also believe is it is important to be transparent with money. When I say transparent, you can talk to your kids about what is your earnings per year or what is your business turnover per year. You can also talk about where you are investing and how you are investing for the next generation and what is that next generation they entail from it and where you are going right, where you are going wrong. When I was growing up, money was never spoken about. It was a whole new stereotype and myth that is never spoken about. Today, I don't have kids, but I have my nieces and nephews, and I make sure I educate them about money and I tell them, hey, these are the things you need to learn. And by giving them that financial education, you teach them not only about their finances, but it gives them independence. It gives them capability to make their own decisions. And I encourage parents, I'm sure he also does, I encourage parents, irrespective of whether they are immigrants or not, I encourage them to talk money and be transparent about money conversations with their family members, their partners, their children, their parents, and so.
Yeah, very well said. You'd be surprised at what age children start to pick up the money conversations. And I've read a lot of literature and research on this, and they say as early as 3 years old, children start to understand maybe not so much the concept of money, but that money exists and it's used to pay for certain goods and services as well. So we have a joke at our household is that anytime our kids want a gift, they have to, a toy or anything new, they have to gift a toy away.
Oh.
So we want to show them that it's, happiness is not about the accumulation of toys and all these other things and games and so much. And it's a very difficult balance, let me say that. My wife does a really good job of championing that. But to kind of embody that at a very young age, it's really important to have those conversations transparent conversations. I mean, there's certain things you probably want to leave out because they're just not old enough to understand it. But from very simple premises, is that when it comes down to what is happiness, we try to teach our children that, okay, if you want something from the toy store, and they want something every time they go to the grocery store, probably like many other families that you see, but we try to say, okay, well, why do you need it? Why do you want it? And if you really do want it, then we have to gift
Let
it
go
one away.
of something.
And it's beautiful seeing. This is more with my eldest, who's 4. The youngest is still a little too young, but the 4-year-old is starting to understand. Okay, well, if I really want this, then I'm going to give something else to this individual. So it's teaching him about philanthropy, of giving back to others who may not have the same opportunity. So there's ways to take what is a challenging conversation and flip it around so it becomes the art of giving.
Beautiful, really, really beautiful. That even a 4-year-old understands that if they want to gain something, they have to let go of something. And thank you for being such an amazing parent, you and your
That's mostly my wife.
Yeah, I think both of you are amazing parents, I'm sure. And thank you so much for taking the time today.
Yeah, thank you. I had fun. Real honor.
Thank you. I am going to share Harjeet's LinkedIn profile on the description. And I'm also going to share the podcast links. I'm also going to share my LinkedIn link as well on the description. Reach out to us if you have a question, if you have a comment, if you have suggestions. We are available on Apple Podcast, Google Podcast. I know Google Podcast is dying, but we are still available there. We are available on YouTube, both audio version as well as video version. If you have a question, drop a message. And please do subscribe to us. Follow us on social media platform. We are available on LinkedIn, Instagram, TikTok. And we are going to bring more and more and more and more immigrant stories to you. Thank you so much. Have a great day, viewers of business. Bye-bye.